You ever get that feeling you're playing a game that you don't actually know the rules? Or that the choices you think you're making aren't entirely your own? Well, today we're pulling back the curtain on the hidden systems that shape our lives, a lot of times without us even noticing. We're diving into the architecture of control.
So, the core idea here is that the most powerful kind of control isn't some big, obvious force. It doesn't shout at you, it whispers. It works in the little gaps where you don't even think to look, the places where things just seem, well, normal. It's like a filter between what's really going on and what you perceive is going on.
So, how in the world do you spot these invisible levers? Well, it all comes down to asking one really simple but powerful question, and we're going to keep coming back to it. Who benefits if I don't question this? This question is our grounding check, our way of starting to see the unseen.
Okay, let's start with the most recognizable part of this whole structure, the external pressures we all deal with. These are the controls that exist outside of us, in our day-to-day environment.
The very first layer is time pressure. Look at this diagram here. See how urgency literally creates a wall? It's designed to block our ability to reflect, to have an insight, to act on our own terms. That's why so many manipulative systems are built around some version of decide now. Because when we're rushed, we don't really choose. We just grab the default option. We're basically trading our agency for speed. And this isn't some abstract theory, right? This is built into our everyday lives. Deadlines at work, the constant ping of notifications, keeping your streaks alive on an app, the infinite scroll of a feed, and, of course, the classic limited time offer. They all create this constant, low-grade hum of pressure. And the message is always the same: act now, think later. Next up is our obsession with metrics. This visual shows the process perfectly. You take our messy, complicated, nuanced reality, and you flatten it. You just squash it down into a single number. And because it's a number, it feels objective. It feels real. It feels true. I mean, just think about it. Grades in school, your credit score, rankings, return on investment, likes on social media. Once you start measuring something with a number, you stop asking, is this actually meaningful? And you start asking, how do I make the number go up? That's not measurement, that's behavioral steering. And here is where everything pivots. This is the crucial point. So far, we've been talking about forces on the outside, but the most sophisticated, the most effective control doesn't need an external enforcer, because we become the enforcer. So let's move into our next section, the internal takeover. How do these external pressures actually get installed inside our own heads? Most control just bypasses our logical brain and goes straight for the gut, for our emotions. You can see the three main levers right here. First, you've got shame, that little voice inside that asks, what kind of person thinks like that? Then there's fear, warning you, hey, if you don't do this, you're gonna lose that. And maybe the most powerful of all, belonging anxiety, the idea that people like us just don't think that way. See, none of these are debating facts. They're threatening our very identity. And when our sense of self is on the line, reason usually takes a back seat. Which leads us to this pretty radical idea. What if your identity isn't just who you are, but a control system that's been installed in you? Once it's in there, it filters what you see, limits what you can even imagine, and it'll even punish you with guilt or shame if you try to step outside its lines. The system doesn't need to do anything anymore because we become our own enforcement mechanism. We do it to ourselves. And what's the result of all this? It's a quiet but massive shift in our own motivation. We stop asking that open, curious question, what do I want? And instead we start asking this closed, constrained question, what would someone like me do? We're not chasing outcomes anymore. We're just chasing identity preservation. And that's why it can feel like a part of us is dying when we try to change our minds or break a bad habit. Okay, now we're going to go even deeper. Beneath our identity, beneath our emotions, is the very operating system we use for thinking. Language itself. Yeah, this isn't about propaganda. This is pre-propaganda. Language isn't just a neutral tool we use. It takes the continuous flowing river of reality and it chops it up into little neat boxes. Nouns, objects, events. The act of thinking becomes a thought. It also forces the separation between a subject, me, who acts, and an object that is acted upon. We're basically born into a pre-packaged worldview before we even have a chance to choose one. And our language, modern English, it grew up alongside bureaucracy and contracts and industrial systems. So, you know what? It is fantastic for things like instructions, transactions, and hierarchies. but it's pretty mediocre at capturing lived experience or paradox or the idea of a fluid identity. Anything that doesn't fit neatly into a box gets labeled vague or unscientific. And that's not a bug. It's a feature of a language that's been optimized for control.
So how does a system enforce one reality over all the other possibilities? It happens through a process called the collapse into fact. Just look at the before state on the left. It's a messy, tangled web of different plausible interpretations. But after some active enforcement, a court ruling, a new policy, a scientific declaration, you get the after state. One clean, non-negotiable line, the fact. And all of a sudden, looking back, it seems like that was the only way it could have ever been.
And this is a really crucial point. In this context, facts are not discovered, like finding an artifact in the ground. They are imposed to resolve ambiguity, to end the conversation, to close down the system and make it neat and controllable. It's not discovery, it's resolution.
Okay, I know this all might seem a little overwhelming, but understanding the architecture is the first step to being able to navigate it. So this final section is all about giving you a practical toolkit to help you do just that. This framework gives us a new way to see things. So first, think of a fact not as something that is absolutely true, but as a decision that's been enforced to stop a debate. A fact just needs to hold. Next, a truth is an interpretation that works, that makes sense in a specific context. It's useful, but it's not final. And finally, sense-making is the most open state. It's simply the act of trying to find your way through uncertainty without needing to nail everything down for good.
And this diagram shows how it all fits together. Imagine sense-making is this big, open circle of possibilities. Truths are like stable little islands inside of it. But a control system, it works by imposing a fact. It seals off one part of that open space and says, this is the only reality. These systems have a built-in bias. They present their facts as if they're universal truths, and they treat open-ended sense-making as a threat, as instability that needs to be crushed. Which brings us right back to how these things are enforced. How are these facts held in place inside of us? Shame. Shame isn't just a feeling, it's a governance mechanism. It's that awful feeling we get when we violate our assigned role in the system. And once that shame gets internalized, we police ourselves. The external authority becomes optional. So, if shame is the lock, then what's the key? It might be what the source material here calls a surgical question, one you should use carefully. And it's this: who would I be if I didn't have to remain consistent with my past?
And the diagnosis is right there, in your own reaction. If that question fills you with a sense of fear, it's a good sign that your identity is working as a control system. You've found the lock. But if that question feels like a breath of fresh air, like a wave of relief, then you've already started to open it.